Hello, and welcome back to the School of Self-Worth. Today, you're in for a real treat. I had a truly beautiful, profound, and expansive conversation with Sophie Byfield, a fertility expert and doula, about the secret world of infertility and what it takes to conceive. Sophie is the type of person you want on your side if you are struggling with infertility. And in this episode, she shares crucial information you want to know first and foremost if you're on a long fertility journey. This is the kind of information that is foundational for any woman who wants to bring a baby into the world. So make sure you tune in. And for any high achieving career woman who wants to support their journey by getting on the right side of their intuition in 30 days, DM me 30 on Instagram at Nicole Song. I've got something for you. All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the School of Self-Worth. I am so excited to have Sophie Byfield with us today. Sophie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, Sophie and I were chatting even a little bit before we began about this topic, which I feel like is one that is often quite hidden. And so many women are traveling through a journey of fertility. And that's really Sophie's specialty and expertise. And so, Sophie, I'd love to hear from you. If you could share a little bit of your own journey, like how did you even get to this topic? And even if you could share some pieces of like your fertility journey that informed where you are now.
Yeah, so I did this thing where I got married.
That's funny, right? I
Right?
know.
And we got married and we were like, okay, we're going to have kids. So we started trying right away. And all of a sudden, it just wasn't working. It's a funny story when I think back to it now, how naive I was to the whole situation. Like, I went off birth control in November. My wedding was in June. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to get pregnant. I'm going to surprise him on our wedding day and tell him I'm pregnant. And that just wasn't my story. And as I was going through the journey, I didn't truly understand it. I was trusting my doctors and my specialists and going through all of the steps. And I felt lost and unsupported and completely overwhelmed with everything. And if I fast forward or rewind, we'll say rewind. If I rewind a bunch of years from there, I am a personal trainer, nutritionist, and group fitness instructor. And as I was going through this journey, I just became obsessed with researching and understanding what was happening in my body and what was going on. And as I kept moving through it and feeling more and more alone, I was like, I do not want women to feel the way that I feel right now. I felt lost. I remember going through IVF and having so many questions and having nobody to ask. And as I moved forward, and we're talking year 1, year 2, year 3, I just was like, no, there has to be a better way. And I have to help women who are starting this journey not feel the way that I felt. And I became obsessed and researched and researched. I became a doula, and here we are now, 4.5 years later, and serving women and helping them understand what they're going through when they're struggling to conceive.
Well, I have so many things to say and comment and ask you about, even from that brief intro, because I've been on a long fertility journey myself. And it's really actually fascinating once you enter this world. Say you're getting help from fertility clinics or anything else, and there's just actually not a lot of information. Like they give you the information about the steps to take to get pregnant through their processes, but they don't actually tell you what's happening with your body. It's weird. It's weird. I was like fascinated. And it has taken me many years to even find, like I have a really beautiful, amazing acupuncturist I have learned so much more from her around the processes of our bodies and how women get pregnant than literally anybody else I've ever met in all of the fertility world. And I was kind of like, and she's like this woman with no website that my acupuncturist had to refer me to, who gives me like tons and tons of information. And I'm sharing that because it was like fascinating to me when I met her that how come more people like this don't exist, or more people who don't educate like this? Because it is a really weird world. Like you expect that the fertility clinics and the experts would have all this information. And then they actually really just try to get you pregnant.
And, I truly believe that the doctors and the fertility clinics have an amazing part of this journey.
For sure.
But in the same sense, it's like my grade 5 science teacher. This is how my health science teacher, I bring it back to her. She literally said, if you sit on a toilet seat, you're going to get pregnant. And we go through our lives believing that we can get pregnant at any time, very simply. And yeah, we get older, it changes, but just get off birth control and you'll be fine.
Hmm.
And you really were not, well, I would say our generation is not truly educated on what our reproductive system is telling us.
Right.
And a lot of women who are, in their teens and maybe have acne or have really heavy periods, their first thing that their doctor does to them is put them on birth control and really doesn't explain the long term effects of birth control on our bodies and our reproductive health. I truly, truly believe that our reproductive system is a vital sign for a woman's body. And
Mm.
it gives us so much more information than we're ever taught or that we've ever known. And it's not until you step in this world that you truly understand how important it is.
Well, I think about when I went into birth control young, and I can't even remember, but I think probably in college, and like what you're taught is to suppress your body's symptoms. You're just like, oh, you have cramps, that hurts. Like, let's give you birth control to like keep that down, and then you won't get pregnant. And that's literally all you learn. And then, yeah, I went off it, I don't know, like a decade ago, and I'm like, why was I on that for so long? Like,
Yes.
it doesn't feel good in your body when you finally get off, and you're like, wow, there's like lots of things happening here.
I had the very interesting experience of when I was on birth control. I got an IUD, so my periods were like next to nothing.
Mhm.
And when I got off of it, they were super, super heavy.
Mhm.
And I said to my doctor, is this my body just regulating because I truly haven't had a period in a few years? And come to find out, like I had the most horrible fibroids, but they were
Mm.
completely masked by the birth control.
Yeah.
It does a number on our bodies, and I wish that more people, and we are having the conversation, but more people
Yeah.
would have the conversation for the younger generations.
Well, it's so funny you said fibroids because I also had fibroids and I had surgery to remove them. And when I was trying to get pregnant the first time, it became an issue and I didn't even know. Like I knew they existed there. And then there was like a lot of consequences to pregnancy when you have fibroids. And if anyone's listening, and they're really common, I think fibroids really like more than half of women at some point get fibroids, right? Something
Yes.
like that,
Yes.
and they grow in pregnancy. And so if you don't know about them or don't take care of them or figure out some process for them, they actually can really make your pregnancy quite complicated. And this is not the point of the conversation with Sophie, but I'm just saying it because that's something I learned as well. And then other women would come to me and talk to me about it because they felt really alone in that fibroid journey as well. And then, in parallel, often fibroids are happening when you want to get pregnant at
Yes.
that time, right?
Yes, 100%. For myself, a big part of the first half of my journey was they removed my. There's when you have fibroids. Let me take a step back. They can be inside the uterus, on the wall of the uterus, or inside the muscle. Like when I say the wall, I mean the top of the uterus. So when they're inside the uterus, they like to do like a laparoscopic surgery to remove them to clean out the uterus so that the fertilized egg can implant. So that's what I had right off the bat. Like, okay, we
Mhm.
see six. Let's go in there and cut them out. And I stayed with that fertility clinic for 2 years and just wasn't getting pregnant, was
Mhm.
never seeing this positive test. And it wasn't until I switched clinics and I saw a different doctor, and he's like, you've got a lot of fibroids. And I'm like, what? Like, no one ever mentioned this to me. And he's like, look, you are not going to get pregnant if we don't do an open myomectomy. So that's an open surgery to take all of these fibroids out.
Mhm.
And that's, an extra 2 years of wasted fertility time. And as you get older, your egg quality starts to decline.
Right.
So it becomes harder to get pregnant. And it's because I didn't advocate for myself or ask the right questions or even know the right questions to ask in order to advocate for my fertility to make that go faster. And that's what I fight for with these women in my community, just so that they know that they can advocate for themselves and find out more information in order to make the best decision.
I feel like you have a lot of work to do because I feel like there's not in that well that you will always have work to do because I feel like it's not really common information. Like I feel like it's taken me a really long time to learn things and that it's sort of like this word of mouth system. It feels like very old school. And I have to say my fibroid journey at least was like before social media was so big. So maybe now with social media it's a little bit easier to learn about the people who can educate you or to get the education. But I
Mhm.
remember when I was going through it, I really just literally had my doctors, and I am grateful and fortunate I had doctors who knew right away what my issues were and actually helped me address it right away. But
Right.
it's interesting when you don't have that, if you don't have the exact right people, you can be in the dark like it sounds like you were for a couple years.
Yes, and what I love and hate about our medical system at the exact same time is they don't want to scare you with all of the information, but you don't get to make informed decisions about
Mhm.
your body.
Right.
And then also on the other side, some of our reproductive specialists are just focused on getting you pregnant. And there's so much other things going on with your hormones. I think of women who have PCOS, where they're putting them on drugs to help with PCOS, but not actually healing the imbalances to fix what's going wrong.
Mhm.
And yes, some women will absolutely get pregnant with these interventions, but until we truly start looking at our body as a holistic system and healing imbalances, we're going to have women that have secondary infertility. And that's when they've had one child and really, really struggled to conceive the next.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like it's such a long, complex process. And sometimes women have had an easy time getting pregnant, and sometimes you don't.
Mhm.
And then it can be really hard because you're like, well, why am I, depending on your age and where you're at, but like, why am I having such a hard time getting pregnant? Or also not understanding, like there's all these sort of, I think of them as like doomsday ages and dates out there about your fertility that are actually pretty inaccurate. Like they make you feel anxious and nervous. Like I felt like I had to get married and have a baby by 35 or I was screwed,
Yeah.
pretty much, which is not actually true, but it's still what's sold out there. And I don't even know where that line came from, but it's like repeated all the time.
Yeah. So there's two things there. One, there's so much shame
Mm,
that women have around not being able to get pregnant.
mhm.
And a lot of it is generational.
Yeah.
I know it's very cultural for me, where as soon as you get married, you're expected to reproduce, like you're expected to. And I think of like my grandma who was like, when are you going to give your husband a baby? Like it's this expectation. And when you
Mhm.
can't do it, and you feel so much shame around your infertility journey that you're not sharing it, it's like you're in this constant battle. They say that someone on a infertility journey or a fertility journey is experiencing PTSD every single month, because every single time they get their period and it's a negative test, they go into this I want to say devastation as the
Mhm.
best word. It's like why am I not getting pregnant? Why what am I doing wrong? Is it a decision I made in the past? All of these things and thoughts and feelings. And some women are able to pull themselves out of it. But when you've been on your journey for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and then, your neighbor next door gets pregnant at the drop of a hat, the feelings of shame and worthlessness, and you're failing in your body as a woman, it's just heavy to carry.
Well, even what you said, like what your grandma said, like you give your husband a baby because the worth and value, right? That's what we talk about on this podcast all the time is your worth and value is inherent to your ability to reproduce. And I know that I've had to really work on this is just a function of my body and it has
Mhm.
nothing to do with like who I am as a human and my value in the world and what I bring to relationships and people. And I work on myself a lot and I'm a coach, right? Like I've had a lot of resources to help myself separate that out so I can be on the journey and be good with where their journey is at. And like, that's okay because it can be really long and mine's been long as well. But
Mhm.
it's interesting because I think that most women, like those resources aren't available. So then, yeah, every time you're getting your period, instead of being able to like feel the emotions, move through it, it can just become this like thing. And then not even something that your partner might be able to relate to, especially if they're a man, like about what it's like to go through that cycle.
Mhm. And it's like what I found for me personally when I was in the first half of my journey before I started sharing it is until you start talking about it, you don't realize how many people in your circle
Mm.
have had some sort of experience around trying to conceive. And you were stuck in this dark place because you are unable to have this one thing that you want. And it's like you're trying to crawl yourself out and be positive because they say, your mindset and you need to manifest this baby when the weight of your world is on your shoulders. Like it's heavy. What I have found is male partners tend to not completely understand. It
Mm.
doesn't mean that they're not going through it. It doesn't mean that they don't see it, but they don't know how to support you in it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I feel like what you're even saying when we're experiencing this over and over again, I mean, it must be something, one of my friends was telling me there's so many of these stories, like someone who is adopting a baby or about to adopt a baby, and then they find out they're pregnant, right? And like this, because it's like the stress of wanting to conceive can be so intense and so prolonged. And then all of a sudden you take your attention off and then boom, you get pregnant, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Like, I'm curious for you then, you must work with women so much then on that initial experience of like the stress of the
Mhm.
fertility journey. And I'm curious if you could share more about that.
Yeah, so it's all about, for me, it's about healing to conceive.
Mhm.
And healing is not only healing your menstrual cycle, your reproductive system, but also how you're carrying your stress, because stress is going to be there. And the
Mhm.
brain is stuck in like the reptilian era. And it doesn't know the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and being stuck in traffic.
Mhm.
And what it does, and most women don't understand, is it actually shuts down your reproductive system. So your hypothalamus, which is in the back of the brain, it stops hormones from being reproduced when you're stressed out. So when women start to decrease their stress, or they take their mind off of trying to conceive and just start to enjoy their life again, um, a lot of them, I'm not going to say all, but a lot of them tend to conceive. For myself, I decided in December of 2023 that I was going to go on a completely healing journey.
Mm.
It was really funny. It started with the smell of eggs. My husband made scrambled eggs and they stunk and they were the most disgusting thing to me. And I stopped eating eggs. And then I slowly just removed meat. I started working out again. I was journaling. I was doing my self care. I was taking care of myself, and I got pregnant. And so now we're about 20 weeks along, and it
Amazing.
really was me healing parts of myself that I was still holding on to that I didn't know were there and taking up space.
Mm. Well, first, congratulations.
Oh,
That's
thanks.
incredible, amazing, so cool. Yeah, after all these years, amazing, just amazing. I know that probably is just so deeply close and held in, so really amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then yeah, so really, I love hearing what you're saying about like when we're just focused on that healing journey and healing yourself. And it's not like I'm curious because you must still have been doing things related to the fertility journey while you were also doing that healing. So could you talk about what it's like to do that dance?
It's, what's so interesting about my kind of steps to conceiving and what I now teach my ladies in the Heal to Conceive program is I go back to the basics. Like, let's strip away everything that you've learned from the internet. You don't need to be on every supplement. You don't need to be doing everything. Let's look at what your body is telling us and then
Mm.
slowly add things back in. For myself, when we were on the journey, when between December and March, I went back to the basics. I went back to using ovulation sticks and
Mm.
tracking my temperature, looking at my cervical mucus. I actually went from 10 different supplements to 4. Like I cut
Yeah.
back. I just I just took it back to the basics and was like, what does my body need? What is my body
Mm.
telling me it needs? And let me feed it that. And that's what I've been finding is a lot of these women that come into the program really are, look, I'm doing everything. I'm taking all the supplements, I'm going all the doctor's appointments. I did acupuncture, I've done this, and it's still not working. Why
Mhm.
isn't it working for me? And not everything is going to work for everybody. So we
Right.
really need to strip it back down to the basics in order to figure out what works for you.
Right. And that's such an interesting practice because it also depends on what age you are, how long you've been trying to conceive, what your partner is like, right? There's so many different pieces of it, I can imagine.
100%. It takes two. So one of the very first things I say is, has your partner been tested? Because you don't want to
Mm,
be 4 years into this journey and you actually have male factor infertility, and that's why you're not getting pregnant. Something else which is very interesting is a lot of women don't get their AMH tested.
mm,
And it's one of the key factors in knowing where you are in terms of your egg reserve and how close you are to menopause. Because
mhm.
then we may need to be more aggressive with our treatments. We may need to scale back if you're far away and you're going to have lots of eggs prepared. And this isn't something that necessarily the fertility clinics either request, ask you for, or even look at if you're under 35. They're just like,
Mm.
hey, you're under 35, you should be fine. But we're learning more and more that women are going into menopause earlier and earlier.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you talk a little bit more about that? Like what is causing that and how do even women start to know or understand that that's happening?
That's a
I know
very
it's a
loaded
complicated
question.
topic. I know. It's a complicated question.
It's a
I'm just
very
kidding.
loaded question. You know what? The best indicator is to talk to your mom, your grandma, and your
Mm,
auntie and really find out when they went into menopause
mhm,
and actually start listening to your body, because we're on so many drugs that actually hide symptoms of things that are happening.
mm,
And when you start listening to your body, it will tell you, and become the master of your menstrual cycle. That means if you come to see someone like me, I want to know, how long is it on average? When do you ovulate? Are you seeing cervical mucus? I want to know those things. And so when you're on your fertility journey and you're handing over that information to the fertility specialist, you lose control. And it's not control in the sense like I have to control every single thing, but you're not empowered to make the decisions that best affect you and your body. I was talking to this young lady and she was asking me about, do you think I should do this surgery? And I said, have you done your research? Do you know the pros, the cons, the ins, the outs? Because at the end of the day, only you can live with the results of what's happening. So you need to understand what is going to happen, how it's going to happen, and what the outcome could be before you
mhm.
make an informed decision. And people, doctors, don't talk about it like that anymore.
That's interesting because I am somebody who talks a lot about intuition. So part of it for me is always like, how do I intuitively feel?
Hmm.
And I also find out, and I found out over time that it also really helps to have the data, right? Like you need both of those things.
Yeah.
Because I think about what you're talking about, tracking your temperature, seeing where your cycle is at. You actually really need to know that information to figure out if you're capable of conceiving in the situation you're in now. No matter how much you might trust that you're going to get pregnant, you might still actually need some additional support to actually get pregnant.
100%. And when you are informed and have that information and you walk into the fertility clinic,
Mhm.
you get better results. And when I say better results, I mean a better experience with the fertility clinic, better
Right.
experience with the nurses, better experience with the doctors. You may still have to go IUI, IVF, medicated cycles, but you know exactly what's happening and you
Mhm.
understand it a lot better.
Yeah, and so it sounds like for me, what it sounds like you're doing with women is like you understand really what's happening, but you're helping them advocate for themselves in this process.
100%. 100%. Because we don't know how long it's going to take. And
Mhm.
we don't know if you need medical intervention. What we do know is that we can find our voice and understand what's happening and advocate for ourselves to make sure that our treatments are aligning with what our body needs, not the step by step, you're in a fertility clinic, you're a number type process.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And this is a slightly different direction. And I don't know if you have spent much time in there, but I've been working with an acupuncturist who also talks a lot about how Western medicine doesn't really always address also the heart of what's the issues are, when the way the protocols that she puts me on are not ones that I've ever experienced anywhere else or that anyone else even knows about. And it's interesting because it's really separate. It's its own thing. And I'm curious if you've seen a lot of that too, like other protocols that make a big difference for people that are really outside the Western medicine model.
100%. It's all about peeling back your body's onion and listening to what it's actually saying at the heart of it.
Mhm.
Um, I have a love-hate relationship with acupuncture. I love it for everybody else.
You personally have a love-hate
I
relationship.
personally do. I'm not someone that I can't lay still. I
Mm.
remember on my fertility journey, she's got all her needles in and I'm lying there and my brain is spinning. I want to be doing something else, anything else. It 100%, I have clients that advocate for it and it works for them. And I 100% believe in it,
Mhm.
but I am not the one that can lie there.
That's hilarious. I've actually turned it into for myself because I'm like, okay, Nicole, like you need the parasympathetic nervous system to relax and calm down. You're going
Mhm.
to take your weekly snooze here. Like, just do that, you know? But I can understand why, because at first you're just like, there's really nothing to do.
Yeah. That is exactly it, 100%. But honestly, I truly believe that Western medicine has shifted to just healing symptoms
Mm,
and not healing the cause. Until we turn back and start healing the cause,
mhm.
we'll see more and more women struggling to get pregnant.
Well, it's interesting. And again, not to diss at all the fertility clinics because they do really magical work, but I also
Mhm.
had that experience. There's like not a lot around like what's happening outside. It's
Mhm.
just the science. It's, versus how are you taking care of yourself? Like, what are you doing on all these other levels to help that happen? And I'm curious if you like, what do you advocate for people in terms of like, how do you actually build that whole team? Or is that something you really support women with, like building your full medical team when you're wanting to get pregnant?
100%. So, what we start with is understanding our body and moving through sort of what is your reproductive health, what is going on there, looking at your nutrition, looking at your stress management. And then one of my core modules is how do you build your team?
Mm,
What does your team look like? Is it the fertility clinic, your general practitioner? Is it an OB? Is it a fertility coach and a fertility nurse? Is it an acupuncturist? Like we really look at what you need. Some people will need the therapist and the coaching. Some people need the fertility clinic route because they need more of a medicated system. Some people are fine with just their GP and acupuncture and a naturopath. So it's really kind of looking at what your body needs, figuring out what your body needs, and then supporting it. I believe that you need to be the scientist of your reproductive health and look
mhm.
at it from multiple angles.
Well, and I love what you're saying too, because I think sometimes my expectations, and I see this for other women too, the expectations is like your one clinic will have all the answers.
Mhm.
And I think it's really hard because also the investment in the fertility is so high, right? That you feel like it should be the one stop shop for everything.
Yeah.
And the truth is, and this is true of so many things in life, that we often need multiple people
Mhm.
doing different things to support you so that you can actually get through to the other side versus thinking that it's all going to be in one place.
Yes, and what I have found now working with clients for 2 or 3 years is we go in with to the fertility clinics with the best of hopes,
Mhm.
and it is a huge investment, but, when we step sort of if there's a certain amount of people there are people that get pregnant right away with a fertility clinic,
Totally.
and, that is amazing, and I don't wanna knock them because I do believe that they have an amazing place in this journey, but it really it really is something to be said when we're looking at the whole system and just not reproduction.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like we really actually want someone to be asking like, how's your sleep? How, what are you eating? What are you doing to relax? Like, how do you spend your time? Are you on social media constantly? Whatever, you know what I mean? Even though like those are questions you and I might ask our clients. It's funny, the doctors don't. And actually, it could be worthwhile, right? For us to start to take
100
those into account.
100%. But I also think that with women that are on a fertility journey, we can also go too far the other way.
Mm,
where we can become obsessed with everything that we eat, everything we touch, everything that happens.
yeah.
And there really is this fine line. And I'm an advocate for you still need to enjoy your life while you're on this journey
Hmm.
because you have no idea how long this journey is going to take. One of the clients in the Heal to Conceive said to me, Sophie, should I stop hot yoga while I'm trying to
Mm,
conceive? And I said, well, we don't know how long it's going to take you. So, or do you want to stop it? In my situation, it took me 4 years. So, is
mm,
that something you want to stop for 4 years, or are you still experiencing benefits? Can we set up a schedule where you enjoy it at certain times in your cycle and then don't do it in other times, do regular yoga in other times? And we really created that for her because we're told you can't drink, you can't do this, you can't do this. And then there's women who get pregnant by accident and they were out partying the other day, right?
mhm.
So, and they have healthy, amazing babies. So I'm not saying that you should be drinking and partying all the time, but there is a nice, fine balance to also living your life when you're on this journey. And it helps with your self esteem and your mental health every step of the way.
Well, when you said 4 years, this brings up a question for you around how did you for yourself like stay in that faith and that hope that you would get pregnant? Because I'm assuming that whole time you were like, I want to have a baby. I want to have a baby in some fashion. And also probably thought of all the alternative ways you could be a mother outside of having your own child. And like what really kept you sustained on that journey for yourself?
I would like to say that in the beginning, it was super rough. Just because my expectation was that I was going to get pregnant right away.
Mm,
And so when it wasn't happening month after month, it was really knocking me down. What I started finding was exercise helped me release those emotions.
mhm,
So sometimes it was I needed to use the parasympathetic nervous system and calm my body down and do a yoga. And sometimes I was like super stressed and I needed to burn the energy off and go for a run.
mhm.
From there, there was a lot of journaling, support groups, and my therapist. And a lot of women don't like to lean on a therapist during this time, but I think it is so important to make sure that they're in your team because there are highs and there are devastating lows. And I know women that have gone through 4 to 5 miscarriages and don't have a therapist, and it can get very dark and very
Very hard.
hard.
Mhm,
Yeah, so just being able to have someone that can listen and support you and be able to really help you transition through the journey or move through the journey and also learn that it's not your fault.
mhm. Yeah, I feel like miscarriage, we haven't really spoken about that much. That is a journey because I lost a baby that I feel like many women don't understand that there is actually a way through that and they carry it for so
Mhm,
long because it is literally a death, it's a loss, and
mhm,
our society doesn't really treat it that way typically. And then they don't understand that there's resources for it, like they just struggle with it on their own and their partners don't understand, and there's so much in there. And so I don't know that we have to go anywhere with it, but I always, for any of you who are listening and that has occurred for you, I just want you to know that there are really resources available
mhm.
and there are really powerful ways to move through it for yourself so that you don't have to carry it in a really heavy way.
100%. And for anyone that's going through it right now, like sending you baby dust and lots of love and healing because I know how hard it is on your heart.
Mhm.
And there is another side when you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sophie, this has been such a fascinating conversation and so fun. And I'm curious, so if there's someone listening who has been struggling with their fertility or wanting or like feeling like, oh, maybe I actually do need support, what's one tip you would give them to start to say, okay, what am I doing all that I need to right now? I mean, you're dealing with a really complicated subject. I know I'm
Mhm.
asking you to distill it down to one thing. And is there a way you could just even start to give, like, what would be the next step for somebody who's facing something like this?
I would say the very first step is to make sure both you and your partner get tested. So, male
Mm,
factor is huge. And get an AMH test, because that will really tell you your egg quality and your reserve, and let us know how close you are to menopause and how aggressive you need to be. And this is going to be very controversial when I say this. Stop Googling supplements. Stop Googling supplements, because you do not need every single supplement that's out there. Talk to a naturopath, talk to a fertility specialist, and let's decide on what's best for your body.
Good to know. It's true. Sometimes you can just be like, these are insane. So stop Googling the supplements. I love that. All right. Well, Sophie, are you ready for our rapid fire cues?
I don't know. It feels like a lot of pressure. Whenever
You'll be great. These are very light. They're very fun. Okay. Here's our first one. So what was the last thing you watched on TV?
Star Trek.
Oh, you're a Trekkie. Awesome.
I'm totally a Trekker.
Awesome. Okay, amazing. What's on your nightstand?
Prenatals. So right now, I have prenatals, my puffer. The book I'm currently reading is The One Thing, and water.
What's The One Thing about?
Ooh, it's actually a really good productivity book, in that you need to narrow down the most important thing. So asking yourself, if my goal is, 3 months out, what is the most important thing, the one thing I can achieve today that moves me closer to that goal, instead of being absolutely trying to do a little bit of everything.
Cool. Oh, I love that. I always love, this is why I ask about what's on your nightstand, because then I get book recommendations. Okay. When was the last time you tried something new, and what was it?
Ooh, that is a great question. There hasn't been a lot of trying new with being pregnant.
Well, being pregnant, I would say, is probably a good trying something
try new. Okay, if I was to say being pregnant was a good try new, I would say that. But outside of that, I don't know. When was the last time I tried something new? Oh, I tried a white chocolate chip macadamia cookie, because I'm not a big macadamia fan, but I was pleasantly surprised. I was pleasantly surprised.
I think that is bold, because I'm not a white chocolate fan either. So you went for it. So that's awesome.
I did.
Okay, last one. What are your top 3 most used emojis?
Ooh, the check mark, the the check mark, the happy face, and the laugh, because I've got 2 amazing nephews, and my sister sends me parenting faux pas all the time, and I die of laughter.
There's funny things that are happening with them, and then you're cracking up face all the time.
Exactly.
I love that. My niece cracks me up too. I'm always like, what are you, she's 4 and just doing the silly things you do at 4 all the time.
So Jeremiah is 4, and it's just insane the things that they
so
do.
Funny. They're so cute. They're so cute. Well, Sophie, what a delight to have you. We'll link everything to reach you. But if you could just let everyone know what's the easiest way to reach out to you if they're really wanting some support on their fertility journey.
You can find me, actually, I'm most active on TikTok. So you can find me there. And it's Fertility Coach Sophie. And my podcast is dropping in the next couple weeks. Super excited.
So exciting.
And it's called Heal to Conceive. So you can find me on the Heal to Conceive
Okay.
podcast.
And we'll definitely be linking this, because this will be coming out by then. So we'll definitely link to all of that stuff in the show notes. Everyone check it out. Screenshot if you love this episode, and tag Sophie. Thank you, Sophie, so much for being in this rich conversation, such an important conversation for women. And thank you for opening it up. I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.